it is 2 o'clock, and our next committee of the day is the Public Service Committee. Those committee members are Mosley, Kamer, Holland, Lombardo, and McKittrick. We do have all members present except for Mosley and Kamer, so Councilwoman Holland will be chairing today. Whenever you're ready, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. May I have a motion to approve the preceding meeting's minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Very good. I would ask the clerk to read in the first item before the committee today.
Item number 6 is a resolution declaring it necessary to improve Wilshire Road between the termini of San Run Road and North Hawkins Avenue, Zurich Road between the termini of 40 feet west of Summerhill Drive and Balmoral Drive, Polson Drive between the termini of Rocky Hollow Drive and 450 feet north of Rocky Hollow Drive, Rockwood Drive between the termini of the west cul-de-sac and the east cul-de-sac, Rocky Hollow Drive between the termini of 70 feet west of Rocky Hollow Drive and Shady Ledge Drive, Shady Ledge Drive between the termini of Rocky Hollow Drive and the west cul-de-sac, Stoner Street between the termini of Juneau Avenue and Crestview Avenue, Cortland Avenue between the termini of Hawkins Avenue and Hartford Avenue, Hazel Street between the termini of Bank Street and 800 feet east of Bank Street, Goodyear Boulevard between the termini of Johns Avenue and 510 feet east of Johns Avenue and North Arlington Street, between the termini of 70 feet south of Munson Street and 460 feet north of Forge Street by the repair of concrete pavement and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Mr. Luddle?
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of committee. This is our annual concrete street repair program. This is the assessment legislation. So this legislation will allow us to notify the budding property owners. They will get an estimate of what their costs will be until we complete the project, which will be sometime next year through the warranty process. Then they will receive a bill. So this is just to notify those property owners. This program this year is in wards 1, 4, 8, and 10. So streets in those wards are listed below, and it's not a full depth replacement. These are streets that have not gone to the point where you have to totally remove everything. This is basically a slab repair. So the first street on there, I believe, is Wilkshire. So they look between those termini and they look at the worst slabs. They will go in and remove all that concrete and do a new slab. But it may only be like 400 feet, and it may only be one side of the road. So this will bring it back. The streets that are entered through a petition process, some of those are beyond this type of repair. So those will need a full improvement. But this is just a slab repair of these streets that were listed. We applied for money a few years ago. We did receive $1 million from the Ohio Public Works Fund. So that does actually help this project go farther. It's about a $1.8 million project. With that, I will take any questions.
Thank you. First, any questions from committee members? Yes, Mr. Lombardo.
I'll just ask a question. Maybe it's making a bunch of statements, but you know, this is, I think, one of the first that I've seen. I mean, obviously we have the asphalt program. This is for all the concrete streets. Okay, so is there? So I'm not familiar with streets in 1, 4, 8, and 10 as much as Ward 2, but so you were saying that there's going to be someone that's going to assess that it could be maybe a patch job versus a full slab replacement?
Well, this is like where they would go in, and let's just say there's 60 feet between here. They will remove all that concrete. They will saw cut it and remove that bad section. And typically a lot of these are by intersections, you know, where the cars stop.
Right.
So they'll remove all the way down and put all new concrete in. But it's not going curb to curb from this intersection to that intersection.
No.
So it's just not I wouldn't call it a patch. They are removing that bad concrete and putting in new concrete, but it's not rehabilitating the whole road, no, sir.
Right, and it's, you know, you can't really patch concrete. You have to remove it, like you said. That's
Correct.
The process.
I mean, we obviously, a lot of our concrete streets that are 40, 50 years old, they do have patches on them. A lot of times we'll use hot mix.
Yeah.
But we're trying to use the IT4 money moving forward to do more proactive maintenance on these. And a prime example is going to be Roaming Road. We have a program to go in there now that we've totally rehabilitated that road to continue maintenance on that road.
Okay. So this is 1, 4, 8, and 10. In the past, did we do others? Is this what's on schedule now? Or is
Yeah,
this-
that's for this year. The next year we'll target other wards, yes.
Okay. Okay. Was it other wards last year that you recall?
I believe it was. I don't have the list.
Okay.
It was a very small list because we didn't have the Ohio Public Works funding last year. So we apply for that every year.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Little, I have a couple of questions about this. Can you give us a rough idea of how many concrete streets we have in the city of Akron? Just rough.
Well, I'd have to give you probably center line miles. I don't know exactly off the top of my head, but I'll get it to you. I don't want to say it's 15%. Let me check and I'll get it to you.
Fair enough. And when we talk about receiving $1 million in grant assistance for this expense, how is that money applied?
Well, I mean, what we do when we put these programs together, they look at the streets we're applying for. So it's based on traffic counts, and it's based on, high uses. So if we applied for funds and it was more of a residential street that wasn't highly used, you're not going to be as successful because everybody's after that same money. So they're going to apply that to where they get the biggest bang for the buck out of the money.
Okay, and in any event, does this result in a savings to residents in those rare cases when that kind of money is applied to the cost?
We never get fully funded, obviously, but
Sure.
it does help offset. But our assessment rates are set,
Right.
okay? So it's based on the front foot of your house. So for concrete streets, it's X. For when we just do regular residential resurfacing, those rates have not been increased since 2009. So we probably do need to look at those assessment rates, but we have not raised them. So for an asphalt street, I do know that off the top of my head. For a front foot, you pay $6.65. So if you have a 50-foot lot, basically you're paying about $300 over 5 years.
Okay, very good, thank
Yep.
you. Any further questions? And what's your pleasure, Mr. Little?
Consent's fine.
May I have a motion?
I'll make the motion for consent.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Very good. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Item number 7 is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts after publicly advertising for bids to replace the HVAC system at the Fire Maintenance Building and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Little?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, our fire maintenance facility on Triplet Boulevard, this equipment is well beyond its useful life. We are looking to do a full improvement of this equipment. Right now, it's what they call a split system, where they have air handling or furnaces inside the building, and then they have the refrigeration lines going out through the wall or through the roof, and the outside equipment. What we're going to do is totally upgrade that equipment to rooftop equipment, which puts everything outside, which is new refrigerant, higher efficiency equipment, and obviously will allow us to bring in more makeup or outside air as we update all these facilities. So the cost of this, we're hoping is actually under that, but there are some structural improvements that have to be done to the building to accommodate that rooftop unit.
Very good. Any questions from the committee? Questions from council members?
Consent's fine.
Very good. May I have a motion?
Motion for consent.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Very good. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Item number 8 is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts through the TIPS Purchasing Cooperative for the replacement of the fire training garage roof and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Little.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, over on Emmett Road, our fire training facility, in one of the storms we had, I believe it was later in the fall, we did received some damage to that roof, so we patched it in. But this is going to be a full improvement to the roof, where we're going to take it all the way down. We're going to take off all the roofing, all the insulation, and then we're going to upgrade this roof to a new roof. We will receive, with this TIPS, we will receive a 20-year warranty, and there's no dollar limit on this warranty, so they won't prorate the warranty if something happens to this. One thing, this is about a 3,800 square foot roof. Like I said, bidding it through the state program, we received the best pricing by doing this, but we do have to match we have to bid what they spec, which is a EPDM membrane roof. It's a rolled membrane with 2 inches of insulation over the deck. So with that, I will take any questions.
Any committee members? Members of council? Mr. Lettle, what's your pleasure?
Consent's fine.
Do I have a motion?
Motion.
And is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Very good. Next item.
Item number 9 is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts with ProTech Oilfield Services for the plugging of City of Akron inactive oil and gas wells and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Lettle.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. These wells, I believe, were put in the middle 80s. They're just north of our plant, down in the valley, north of Bath Road, and some of them are on Cauga Valley National Park property that we had. I'm not sure how we owned the land, and I think there was a swap of land at one time, and they assumed that land. But we have been plugging these wells for a few years now. Like I said, they haven't produced anything for over 10 years. So we did a couple right before COVID, and then what happened was we started this process, and then the ODNR changed the way you have to cap these wells. We used to be able to just dig a hole and then pour concrete in there. Now you actually have to rig out a drill rig and drill down and then put in this hydraulic cement. So those 2 wells will get redone because they weren't completed, and then we're going to plug, I believe we're going to plug 9 and 13. We're going to finish that process, and number 8 we are going to plug totally off. So I guess with that I'll take any questions, but we inherited these wells from years ago, and we're just trying to get them capped off.
Very good. Any questions from committee members? Members of council? And what's your pleasure?
Consent's fine.
May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Linda Morgan, I can't find my hand signal on my computer. I'm sorry about that.
Go ahead.
I'm just curious. I have a question. Mr. Little, is there any kind of guarantee that we offer that these things, I know we have to be responsible if anything happens and we plug them so that nobody can get in them and hopefully nobody can ever get hurt. But what kind of warranty do we do? Is it a lifetime kind of thing when we do this?
The ProTech, the company we're hiring, they meet all the standards set by ODNR. So when they do this, these are inspected, that they are capped properly, and then they do meet what's required by ODNR to cap these wells off. They are secured. I will tell you that. They're behind fences, so no one could just walk up to them.
Okay.
They're not accessible to the public, but yes, they do meet the requirements by ODNR, and they're a certified company to plug them off or cap them off.
Okay, and if when we, I know we have other oil wells, but at what point do we determine that they're not generating any oil or whatever, and that we're not getting any royalties or whatever from them, that we determine that we need to cap them?
Well, that's based on usage, but a lot of the gas wells that are on our property are not owned by us. We lease the land to them, and they have that responsibility that when they deem that they are no longer producing, they have to have those capped off in our agreement with, I believe, within 2 years of them, they stop producing, or they get to the point where they don't think it's productive to keep the operation going because they're producing at such a low rate. So it's up to, we have a signed agreement with those companies that they must cap them off when they're done using them.
Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Mr. Lettle, consent agenda?
That's fine.
May I have a motion, please?
Motion for consent.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Next item?
Item number 10 is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts after publicly advertising for bids for the construction of fire alarms and sprinklers at the Municipal Service Center complex and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Lettle?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of committee. Yes, we talked about this. I think I gave this explanation at capital budget, but out at municipal service centers where we have our Public Works division, it's street cleaning, it's sanitation, and then the whole office staff out there, none of those buildings are sprinkled. And we put this in a couple years in a row, and we were able to get it funded this year, but we obviously all know if we had a fire in one of those buildings, especially with all that equipment in it, could be catastrophic. So we are going to bid this project out and fully suppress not only the street cleaning garage, but the sanitation garage, but also the office.
Very good. Are there any questions from committee members? Members of council? Mr. Lettle, what's your preference?
Consent's fine.
May I have a motion, please?
Motion for consent.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Very good. And if there's no further business coming before this committee, we are adjourned.
Our next committee today will be the Public Safety Committee. Those committee members are Kamer, Mosley, Lombardo, Malik, and McKittrick. We do have all members present except for Kamer and Mosley, so Councilman Lombardo will be chairing today, whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'd like to call the Public Safety Committee meeting to order. If I can get approval of last time approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good. Minutes are approved. This afternoon, we have 4 items coming before us, and the first one is a ordinance authorizing the mayor to apply for, and if awarded, accept a Violence Against Women Act grant administered by the Office of Criminal Justice Services, authorizing the Director of Law to enter into an agreement with Oriana House Incorporated to implement the grant by continuing to fund 2 investigators for the Domestic Violence Unit and declaring an emergency. Today we have Chief of Staff Gert Wilms.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Chair Lombardo. I would like to introduce on my left Prosecuting Attorney Jessica Connell. Jess is currently taking over the Domestic Violence Unit. That DV prosecutor position's been open for nearly a decade since I left it. So definitely looking forward to working with Jess in this new capacity. I will let her and Chief City Prosecutor Morgan talk about the grant, but this is an ongoing grant, and this is a renewal probably about 20, 25 years at this point.
Thanks. Yes, members of council, for over 25 years now, the City of Akron Prosecutor's Office has applied for this grant. It is funded by the 1994 Violence Against Women Act, and it's administered by the State of Ohio Office of Criminal Justice Services. The amount and the match have varied throughout the years. The projected award this year is approximately $46,000 with a 25% match on the city's part. The funds from the grant are exclusively utilized for our domestic violence unit, and specifically they're used to offset the cost of the salaries for our 2 domestic violence investigators. With that being said, if you have any questions about the domestic violence unit, what our domestic violence investigators do, certainly we'll take questions, and I'll certainly turn it over to Ms. Connell.
Very good. Any questions from committee members? We have Councilman Mallett.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. And I don't know, Ms. Condell, do you just kind of want to briefly describe some of the big things that the unit is working on right now?
Sure, thank you. So the domestic violence unit, traditionally we have 2 investigators that work for the unit. On a day-to-day basis, every morning they prepare the protection orders on any new domestic violence cases and make bond recommendations in arraignment court. And then they assist also with reaching out to victims, explaining the criminal process. Municipal court's very fast-paced, so just helping us with reaching out to victims throughout that process, supplementing any reports, and hand delivering subpoenas to victims to make sure that we can stay in contact with them.
Thank you. Can you kind of describe, are there any trends that we're seeing within domestic violence offenses? Not to put you on the spot, but if there are any broad things.
I will actually speak to that because it was a very common trend.
Yep.
The average age of an offender in a domestic violence case kept lowering every year, and it was quite startling. It was probably about 45 when I started 20 years ago, and now it's probably under 30.
Okay.
So it's been an interesting trend to look at and kind of make determinations on what kind of services we can offer. We still have a family violence court where first-time offenders can go through, and ultimately, if they complete the program with the permission of the survivor, that case can ultimately be dismissed. Domestic violence holds an awful lot of back-end consequences for convictions.
Yeah.
So it's still a pretty viable program. There's some talk of what can and can't be done, but that program has existed well before I started in the prosecutor's office, and definitely still a lot of value there. But I got to tell you that trend and how young the offenders keep coming, it's been an interesting one.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that, and appreciate all 3 of you, and particularly the 2 of you for the work that you're doing, and particularly with the point that you made about what a dynamic and fast-paced environment it is in the municipal court. So thank you for the important work that you're doing.
Councilwoman Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This may be a topic for a completely separate visit that we might invite you back for, but I guess I want to follow up on something that Councilman Malik asked. I think that there is probably a lot of space and a lot of need for community understanding of what domestic violence is. And as attorneys, we have maybe a different way of looking at things, and I wonder if you can briefly, perhaps among other things, set straight the idea that domestic violence is only about married people or romantically partnered people. Can you give those who are watching and listening an idea of what we're talking about when we talk about your special role within the prosecutor's office, but also this idea within our community?
Sure. So the charge of domestic violence is any family or household member living together. So it could be partners that are not married that have been living together. That could result in a charge of domestic violence. It could also be a mother versus a child, or a brother and sister that are still living at home together. Those are the most frequent cases that we see, but the intimate partner domestic violence cases are some of the most dangerous ones that we see, and the ones that I focus on as part of my role in the domestic violence unit.
And I would want to add on one of the key components, and I think that's something that you'd like to maybe talk about another time, Ms. Holland. We'd be happy to. Domestic violence, we deal with that cycle of violence. And of course, after the initial charge, you enter into that honeymoon phase where the victims, and it transcends all, gender boundaries. The victims become recalcitrant with prosecution, and they don't want to move forward. One of the things that the domestic violence unit, and and Gertrude, Ms. Williams, during her experience, the domestic violence unit and the investigators help us do is sort of build those evidence-based prosecution cases where we can try to move the ball forward and get the victim and the survivors the help that they need, even when they're reluctant to be involved in the prosecution. So it's certainly one of those benefits that we have, having those investigators involved.
Very good, and I guess I would love to just raise my hand and suggest that we invite these two experts and perhaps other resources for the community and for, general education to come back and see us another day, perhaps including some resources for folks who are not yet part of the system.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Or maybe even speak at ward meetings.
Anytime.
Thank you. I see Councilwoman Linda Amobian with a question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I do have a question. I would request that my name be added to the legislation as well. My question has to do with, and I probably should know this, but I don't. Has this program always been under Oriana House, or is this a new addition to Oriana?
Linda, Councilwoman, as long as I've been here, this has been a program in partnership with Oriana.
Now, I see where you're hiring 2 additional investigators. Is that an expansion or replacement?
Just renewal. These investigators, those positions have existed for more than probably about 3 decades now.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Councilman Malik.
Just as a follow-up, can you kind of describe how Oriana fits into this process?
Historically, no. How it works now, we do a contract with Oriana. We renew that yearly based not only on this grant, because previously we have received much more financial support from the state. And every year the state says this is the final year, find alternative funding, you ultimately need to support this program yourself. So that has always been into consideration. These are not civil service positions. I guess that was one consideration, and it kind of worked hand in hand when we originally had the direct indictment program as well. Since that time, Sherry Benton Walsh's office has taken the direct indictment program. This program has remained independent from when all of that reshuffling took place. So we do not do retirement. We do not do the benefits for these employees. They are all housed under Oriana under that contract. So that was kind of some of the consideration early on. Historically, they have been retired Akron police officers. There's been a little change in the contract language that doesn't necessarily require that. The positions don't require that. So that historically is kind of where it was married up with the direct indictment program and has since been moved, but really no changes in the program from our end.
That's exactly the kind of context I was looking for. Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions from committee members? I don't see any. And just like to ask one of you, what would you like for this
Consent?
piece? Consent agenda?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Have a motion for consent?
So moved.
We have a second? A second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. We'll put this on the consent agenda. Thank you so much for coming this afternoon. Okay, our next item is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to apply for, and if awarded, sounds like the same thing. Am I on the right one? Yeah, it did sound like the same thing. I'm sorry. Ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a contract or contract without publicly advertising for bids for the purchase and/or lease of various new and used vehicles to use for the Akron Police Department Division and declaring an emergency. And we have Captain McCosey.
Good afternoon. This is asking for authorization to pay the bills on a lease. We have several vehicles that are on lease. Some, when we originally got them, were new. Some, when we originally got them, were used. These are for various operational purposes. Those leases came up. They're now expired and were renewed automatically renewed by the enterprise, the company we work with. This is requesting permission to go ahead with that renewal so that we can pay the bills on those. And it would also allow us to purchase a used vehicle. One of the problems that we are having right now is locating new vehicles to purchase. We have one particular vehicle, a van that we've been trying to purchase from the 2022 issue 4 project. We still have not completed it yet because we're still waiting on that vehicle. No end in sight in terms of the supply chain when we might get that. And this would allow us to purchase a used vehicle that's maybe a year old that we could get somewhere for a reasonable price, and we'd be able to go ahead and purchase it. At this point, we do not have any kind of authorization to be able to do that.
Okay. Question on the used vehicle, the van, as you stated. Is this something that has to be specially fitted, or seems like there's a lot of vans out there, but
Frankly, the specifications on it are not that odd or unreasonable, and it's a wide-open cargo van is what we're looking for in the back. But when our normal process is to buy these new and through the state CUE program, and when they put it in the order bank, we tried to buy a Chevy, and it got canceled. We tried to buy a Ford, and it got canceled, and we just can't seem to get through the queue to get a new vehicle. So if we're able to find a used vehicle, this would allow us to do it. At present, the legislation that we had for the original project was for new vehicles through that contract program.
Okay. And then the other piece of this, again, like you said, the bills are due for the leases.
Right.
Or the renewals.
It's a regular process with Enterprise. We have several vehicles that we lease.
Right.
And we rotate them out.
Okay, very good. Questions from our committee? Councilman Malik?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Captain. Two questions. First, the leased vehicles, those are patrol or those are non-patrol vehicles? What kind of vehicles are they?
Those are unmarked. They're for Detective Bureau operations and some other investigative operations.
Okay, sure. And then in the legislation is a not to exceed amount of 160,000. And then in the UCR, the budget and estimate of costs is 70,000. Can you kind of break down where the difference is coming in here?
So it's actually 70,000 for the enterprise leases.
Okay, yeah,
And 90,000 is what was originally budgeted under issue 4 for that part of the project.
I'm seeing
So-
that now. So
Yeah.
that was just my reading comprehension there. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from committee members? Councilwoman Linda Amobian. Go ahead.
Just a moment, Lou. Thank you. For the reason we're having some challenges today, but thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm just curious, this is without the formality of bidding, right?
That is correct.
When was the last time we went through a bidding process for these particular items?
You know, I'll let,
Just to clarify, these are renewal of leases the cars we already have. We're just looking to extend the leases of cars we already have.
These are renewal, just that?
Yes.
So why would bidding come into an issue when we're just renewing? You have to do that anyway?
I cannot speak to the language from the law department, but just for clarification on these specific facts, these are cars we already have. The lease has expired. We're just looking to renew the lease and get the funding to pay for those new leases.
Are we locked into an amount from the initial lease agreement? Or is this an increase?
the amount will be a slight increase. Everything goes up annually. It'll just be the normal, the increase that comes with 2023.
That's right. And how many vehicles are we talking about?
I will have to check for an exact number for you. I believe it's 12.
You think it's 12?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Another question, Councilman Malik?
If there aren't any other questions, would make a motion.
Sure.
So I'll make a motion for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
Good, yes. All right, we have a motion on the floor for suspension of the rules with a favorable report. We have a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Very good. Motion passes. Thank you. Our next item is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Safety or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts without the formality of advertising for bids with ABM Supply LLC for the purchase of communications equipment for the Akron Police Division and declaring an emergency. Again, Captain McCosey.
And good afternoon again. Thank you, sir. This is a request for a purchase of communications equipment. The equipment that we currently use for these types of operations is past its useful life. Much of the equipment is no longer usable, and so we'd like to replace it with new equipment. And so that's where we're at here. There are several different pieces to it, headsets and whatnot, but all told, it comes out to $83,300 on that. And it is important that, to note that this equipment, it was specifically selected after some testing to make sure that it works with our current communications gear, our current radios, and the other equipment that the officers use in these types of operations.
This is nothing. This isn't nothing inside the vehicle. It's like you said, like maybe headsets,
No,
radios?
Correct. These are headsets that the officers wear while they're outside the vehicle, but they have to connect to their radios and
Got it.
try to keep their hands free.
Okay, very good, very good. Do we have any questions from committee members? Councilman Malik?
Captain, could you provide like a list of the types of equipment that are involved? I know you mentioned headsets, but it'd be great.
Headsets, microphones, and push-to-talk buttons.
Okay.
They all kind of fit together as a part of a bigger scheme of equipment.
Okay.
And then they connect into the radio itself.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Holland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Captain, is ABM Supply LLC, is that an Akron business entity?
No, ma'am, they are not from Akron.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is I'm trying to sort of get to why this is a sole source, a no-bid arrangement. Is
Well,
this
it's
somebody you've worked with before?
Mostly because of the compatibility issues with the radios, with the Motorola radios.
So it's the
That
only-
and the other equipment that they wear, everything has to kind of fit together on this to make it work correctly.
So did ABM Supply sell the city of Akron
They are
some of its
well,
other?
they're the distributor for that particular brand of equipment in this area.
Okay.
They have a regional distributorship for that equipment, and we
Got
have to
it.
work within that.
And without digging down into, serious detail, a distributor, is there a particular brand that we're talking about?
There is, ma'am, but I don't have it in front of me. I should have
Okay.
brought it, and I did not.
That's okay. If you could provide that, though,
Yes,
that
I
would be helpful.
certainly can, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions from committee members? Councilman Malik?
I would make a motion for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
Very good. Motion and second has been made for suspend the rules with a favorable report. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. Any opposed? Very good.
Mr. Lombardo, if I could just make one more comment.
Sure.
If you could provide that, what Councilwoman Holland requested before this evening, before we vote, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, very good. And our last item this afternoon is an ordinance amending Title 7, Chapter 70, Traffic Code, Section 70.51, Return of Towed Vehicles of the Akron Codified Ordinances to eliminate the mandatory fee for the return of towed vehicles and declaring an emergency. Again, Captain? Or maybe it's not.
It is not, either one of
Okay.
us, actually. Councilman Kamer actually serves on the tow review board. There was a $15 administrative fee put into effect, and the date absolutely escapes me. Between the tow board, the Akron Police Department, and the Akron Clerk of Courts, there was quite a confusion in how to collect the funds, what the funds were to be used for, what fund the money went into. Ultimately, I think the decision has been made to do away with that $15 administrative fee, but that is my recollection of this story. I've actually not had an opportunity to speak to Councilman Kamer about this legislation, so I don't know if any of your colleagues have had that opportunity, or you want to push this off a week and get Councilman Kamer to weigh in on that legislation.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I had my vehicle towed. But, so just help me understand. I mean, the vehicle gets towed, it goes to a yard, whatever, or is it was towed by the city?
I am going to refer all of this to Councilman Kamer. He
Okay.
is, as long as he's been on council, I think he's been on the tow review board, so he
Right.
would have extensive historical knowledge that I just cannot offer you.
Okay, all right. If you want to question Councilman Malik?
Yeah, I just wanted to suggest we could take a week's time on it and give Councilman Kamer an opportunity to present. I know there was also a letter from Rebecca Trudeau, who's the chair of the Towing Review Board, supporting this as well. So it seems like a pretty straightforward change, but since Councilman Kamer initiated it, maybe we could let him present.
Right, perfect, perfect. So we have a motion for time. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nobody? So we will take time on this ordinance. So again, thank you for this afternoon's time. And with no further business, this meeting is adjourned.
Our next committee of the day will be the Public Utilities and Green Committee, and it will begin at 2:45. Those committee members are Freeman, McKittrick, Connor, Mosley, and Holland. Again, that's the Public Utilities and Green Committee, and it will begin at 2:45. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I would like to call the Public Utilities and Green Committee meeting to order, and if we could please have a roll call.
Freeman.
Here.
McKittrick.
Here.
Connor. Mosley. Holland. All committee members are present except for Councilwoman Mosley.
And then if we could have a motion to accept the minutes from our last meeting, please.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor, please let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Very good. Okay, our first item is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee to file an application for, and if awarded, accept and expend grant funding from the United States Department of Energy and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of committee. We are asking for approval to apply for this grant. It's a $250,000 grant, and what it will be used for is for Route 8. As you know, Route 8 from the interchange all the way to the North Corp line, which is Cauga Falls, and parts of 224 are still our responsibility. So we still maintain minor repairs on that roadway. We do the plowing and the salting. We do clean the inlets. The rest of the expressway system is done by ODOT. Correct. So these traffic lights, all ours on that stretch of road, they are metered. So we feel pretty confident with our application. We went through like a pre-approval type thing. So this money will be used to replace all those high-pressure sodium lights with LEDs, which obviously will lower the operating cost tremendously, and it will lower our maintenance responsibilities because they last so much longer and they don't degrade over time. So the only portion of this that won't be covered in this grant is the Route 8 bridge, because when the new bridge goes in, it's already spec'd for new LED lights. Before the councilman to your right asked the question about why the lights are out on Route 8 bridge, is we had a little snafu last weekend with the power company, and they were inadvertently shut off, so we're getting those back on. So we do have a contract currently where we're just doing regular maintenance on 224, but if the prices come in where we think so, we possibly could even extend this grant down to 224 and change some of those high-pressure sodiums out to LED.
So Central Interchange all the way to the Cauga Falls line?
Correct.
Okay.
And also, sir, Goodkirk and Fountain Street, off those ramps, and those streets are part of that same network, so we'll upgrade those also.
Okay.
Which is good.
Excellent. Questions or comments from either committee members or anyone else that might be with us? Yes, please. Mr. Lombardo?
Thank you. So we mentioned, if I was listening, Route 8, we mentioned 224. Did we mention anything about Route 59?
No.
Isn't that, like,
When we
own
did
that?
Dart and Rand, we upgraded those to LED.
They're already done?
Yes.
Okay.
Just the two service roads that we were in the project, yes.
Okay, not on those as much, but
Yep.
yeah, that would be good. Central Interchange to Cauga Falls, that'd be perfect.
Yes.
Good.
Including ramps.
Including ramps, yes, sir.
Thank you.
There's no other questions. Would consent be?
That would be fine.
Okay, I have a motion for consent. May I have a motion for consent, please?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of placing this item on the consent agenda, please let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Okay, very good. Next item is an ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to accept and expend grant funding from the Ohio EPA for the H2 Ohio Public Water System Equipment Grant Program and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Yes, this is a $10,000 grant. We have two pieces of equipment I'd like to purchase. One is hydrant flow testing equipment. And I'll be honest, I didn't know how frequently we were requested, but our staff out there says probably once a week we're requested to do hydrant flow testing where buildings or mostly commercial buildings are either new construction or they're getting remodeled and they're putting in a new sprinkler system. So their insurance company, requires to do a flow test. So this equipment, you would pick the two hydrants adjacent to the business, you put this equipment on there, you flow for so long, and this equipment will tell you not only the flow rate, which is the volume and the pressure of that, and then they could design their sprinkler system thereof. So their main may have to be, instead of an 8-inch main, they can go down to a 6 or vice versa. If it isn't real high volume, then they may have to go to a 10-inch main on their sprinkler system. So we do this for them, and the other piece of this is leak detection. Typically, when a water main breaks, you see it, right? But there are some where we have underground leaks, and they'll show in storm sewers where they don't rear their ugly head and blow up the road. So this leak detection equipment will be able to go out. You know, it's kind of a sonar thing. You know, it's not a dividing rod, it is equipment where we would go out and try to pinpoint these leaks. So that's what we want to use these two pieces, or this grant for, those two pieces of equipment.
Do we currently have a piece of leak detection equipment? You said sonar, do we have that now?
No.
Oh,
No.
okay.
No, a lot of times what they'll do, especially on residentials, if it's an underground leak, they will put their key, the shut-off key on there, and they will either use vibration, that type of thing, but this will be a lot more pinpointed on where those leaks are at.
Okay. What will we do with our old divining rods then? Will we-
Believe it or not, an old timer showed me one time, and he found it, and I couldn't believe it, but he was pretty good at that. But that was probably 20-some years ago.
Okay. Consent,
That would be fine.
okay. If I could have a motion for consent?
So moved.
Have a motion, a second. All in favor, please let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, very good. Thank you so much, and we'll see that those items are placed on the consent agenda. And we are adjourned at 2:55. Thank you.
Our next committee of the day will be the Budget and Finance Committee, and it will begin at 3 o'clock. Those committee members are Freeman, Amobian, Malik, Baylor, and Lombardo. Again, that's the Budget and Finance Committee, and it will begin at 3 o'clock. Thank you.